Having kids around is always a bunch of fun, and whilst I don't have any children of my own, I imagine that having kids is just like having a tiny little forever best friend who never ever acts erratically or weird and is always super duper chill. But if there's one thing that always makes best friendships stronger, it's having a mutual interest or even a hobby that you can both enjoy, share, and bond over together. And whilst things like children's toys and Lego kits and even cartoons are becoming so high quality that it's easy for us adults to become immersed in them and even genuinely enjoy them, I think that I may have cracked the code to how to get little ones into the best hobby of all, miniature painting. And I don't mean like we gave little Timmy a space marine and he kind of globbed some paint at it and we're all very proud of him and everyone in the local Facebook group says he's a very good boy for trying. I mean like a way to introduce little ones to miniature painting in a way which makes it actually accessible and most importantly enjoyable for them, and which may spark a lifelong interest in the hobby as opposed to it just being cute for us that they're trying the grown-up hobby that we all like to do. So if you have a little one yourself, or you just want to be the cool auntie, uncle, brother, sister, cousin, babysitter, or even teacher, and you think it's about time that you want to introduce your little ones to the fantastically creative and rewarding world of D&D, Warhammer, and miniature painting in general, then this video is for you, but most importantly, it's for your new tiny painting buddy. Whoosh. Let's go. So before we get started on all the cute fun stuff, I thought that this video would be the perfect time to make an announcement about some more cute fun stuff, but specifically, this guy. Say hi. Hello. That's right, it's that time of year again, and there is a brand new Rascal heading to Rascal Town, and I want you all to meet RH005. And you may be thinking that he looks a little bit different from our other goblins, and that is because he is not a goblin at all. He is the very first Rascal Town gnome. He is an extra large, super fluffy, super detailed gnome druid, and believe me, we have packed this guy full of mushrooms, potions, flowers, leaves, and so many little foresty friends. And if that wasn't enough for you as well, you can also add on our newest Rascal Town scenery kit too, which has more potions and more details and even more foresty friends for you to paint up and for your rascals to play with. I think it's fair to say that from the design to the actual making of this miniature, this has been one of the most ambitious rascals that we have done yet, and I love him. I think he's also one of the best, and I'm so proud of him. So head on over to roguehobbies.com now for a chance to take your own gnome home with you today. Thank you. On top of that, because I want to get it out the way now so you can enjoy the video, if you really like this episode and you want to know more, then I have made a resource pack available to download at the Rogue tier of my Patreon. It includes a checklist for items you'll need, a PowerPoint presentation for kids about storytelling with miniature painting, the STL file for the Rascal Town fishing goblin, and some coloring sheets too, so you can recreate this entire class in your own home or classroom. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and thank you especially if you help me and support my channel in any way. I really appreciate it. But for now, back to the regular scheduled viewing. Small whoosh. So I want to make it very clear one more time that I do not have my own kids. I don't know what it's like to raise a child from scratch into a fully functioning adult, and I honestly really respect those that do, especially if you still find time to watch my videos at the end of the day. Like, that's very impressive. Well done. But since I don't have my own kids, I want to make it really clear that nothing in this video is intended to sound like me saying I know more about how to raise a child than you do, because I don't, and that's certainly not what I'm trying to say, I promise. However, when it comes to teaching kids miniature painting, I actually do have quite a lot of experience in this field specifically. Since I was around 25, I taught kids how to paint miniatures with Games Workshop on pretty much a yearly basis. I used to participate and run what was called the paint and take tables during open days and fests. fests, where you would turn up to a big table and just kind of paint miniatures. And a lot of adults thought that this was a great place to leave their kids for a few hours whilst they walked around and enjoyed the con or the fest. And no hate to the parents there, because it absolutely was, and I ended up teaching a lot of children how to paint their very first miniature, but I only really developed a proper method for doing this after I left Games Workshop. About a year ago, me and an awesome little team of filmmakers decided to make a documentary about miniature painting called Art in Miniature, and in it we wanted to talk about how it's a great outlet for creativity and imagination, and we thought who better to demonstrate this than a room full of kids. We set up a kids painting workshop inside of an art gallery where for a day I taught a few classes of kids aged from around 5 to 12 how to paint miniatures, using a method which, as someone who probably has the same level of anxiety and attention span as a child, just kind of felt right to me. And it worked! Really, really well. Even the kids who came in with zero experience of Warhammer or miniature painting managed to just get it, and they were able to produce genuinely great results. But more importantly, they all seemed to really enjoy themselves and just really quickly get over that initial technical hurdle and get right to the good bit, which was expressing themselves creatively with miniature painting. So as you probably know, there's no guaranteed way to get a kid to like something, and often if you try to get them to like something, it'll backfire because I'm afraid that you are inherently uncool because you are the adult. Sorry. Some adults get lucky and essentially clone themselves into mini-me's and their kids like the same thing as they do, but if you try and force an interest on a child, it'll just feel like a slog and like homework, and it'll have the complete opposite effect that you want, and that's no good. I see a lot of people in the Warhammer community sharing their children's first attempt at a miniature, and it's usually something like a Space Marine, and that always blows my mind because while Space Marines are cool and very iconic, they really don't feel like the best choice for your kid's first introduction into the hobby. I feel like if I was an 8-year-old holding a brush for the first time, I'd feel a little bit sad that I couldn't get my Space Marine and its eye lenses to look like the ones on the box, and I may be put off trying again because to me it just feels like an impossible task, and the whole experience may end up just bumming me out generally. A lot of Games Workshop miniatures, and especially Space Marines, are tiny, complex, and kind of lack some of the fun, engaging qualities like big expressive faces and wacky poses that kids love and really respond to in things like cartoons or even video game characters. And just like teaching a child to kick a ball before you expect them to score goals, I think that miniature painting should start very simply. I think that handing a kid a tiny miniature and expecting them to be confident, comfortable, and most importantly, happy with the results that they produce is sometimes a really big ask for those tiny people. So because of all that, my method for getting kids to have fun and feel comfortable and confident whilst introducing them to miniature painting is actually extremely simple. You start by having a brief talk and demonstration with them about how they can use different colours to tell a story about a miniature. Then you let them do a colouring sheet of their chosen miniature so that they can practice and understand what they have to do with a brush, and then you give them a brush, a miniature, and some paints, and just let them go ham. And it's really just as simple as that. All you need to do is carefully consider which miniature you pick as your kid's introduction into miniature painting. RASCAL Town is a miniature range which I designed to be fun for adults and high-end miniature painters, but also great for kids and people who are just starting out, which is why they are much bigger than your average Games Workshop or any other 25 to 32mm miniature. They have big eyes and very large expressive features in general, which makes them perfect for little ones who can feel proud of themselves for painting something as small as an eyeball, and they can also get really stuck in with the details without that huge hand-eye coordination barrier to entry. But obviously, at the end of the day, you can use whatever miniature you like, even a Space Marine if you want to. If you don't have something as large as a RASCAL Town Goblin, then maybe consider picking a bigger D&D or Warhammer miniature for them to try out. You can let your kid pick whatever miniature they like if that's an option, or you can even use a cheap plastic toy which you're willing to prime up and recolor with paints. But yes, for this particular method, I recommend something a little bit bigger and a little bit simpler than your average Warhammer miniature. So what are the things that you will need if you are excited to set up your own miniature painting lesson either at home or in the classroom? You will need either a PowerPoint presentation, a series of images, or just the ability to explain in an exciting way so that you can have a conversation about how to tell stories with colors and express yourself with miniature painting. You'll need a coloring sheet of the miniature, and if you don't have the RASCAL Town ones, then you can usually find line art of Space Marines and toys and most other types of miniatures like that online. You'll need a fun and engaging miniature to paint, coloring pencils or crayons, a water cup, palette and paintbrushes, which you probably don't mind getting a little bit dirty. You'll need paints and lots of kitchen roll or whatever you have to hand to generally clean up a little bit. And that's it. That's all you need to set up one of these classes at home or wherever you like, really. So now let's go over each of the stages in the class in a bit more detail so that we can get it just right. The presentation stage is basically just having a little chat with the kid or kids about what miniature painting is and how they can put their own creative spin on it. Now, what we don't want to do in this stage is do what we usually do when we're talking about miniature painting for the first time to people and flex about how small the miniature is, because if you do that, it may already just seem to the kid like this impossible task and it may throw them off at the first hurdle, so careful how you approach it. I've created a couple of short PowerPoint presentations for different age groups called Storytelling with Colors, which focuses on introducing kids to the idea that they can make their guy tell a specific story using colors and creativity. It encourages them to put up their hands, answer questions, and make their own judgments about creative decisions that we make every day as miniature painters. Things like, if I painted a red goblin with yellow eyes, what would that tell you about the kind of place that he's from? And the answers I get are often really creative and sometimes extremely funny and strange. I love kids. This little chat usually only takes about 3 to 5 minutes maximum, which I feel is just enough time to introduce them to the most fun and basic concepts of miniature painting without boring them with too many details or putting them off with too much explanation. But most importantly, it gets them really excited to show off and get cracking with their own creativity in the next step. Miniature painting is really intimidating, and if you've never done it before, it's very, very scary. But if there's one thing that we know that all kids can do, that is color in. So I find a perfect place to start is with some coloring sheets and pencils. Coloring in for kids is just like miniature painting, but in 2D, and it allows the little ones to skip a bunch of really intimidating steps that would maybe put them off if we just cracked straight into painting a miniature. They can plan their color scheme and even plan a few different color schemes until they find one that they really like, and they can spend time practicing coloring in the lines and build up that dexterity they're gonna need just a little bit more, which will be the same skill that they'll be using in the miniature painting in their next step. When they're comfortable and happy with their design, then they can start on the miniature, which is only a little bit smaller, if not kind of the same size as the picture itself. For some kids, they'll only spend about 2 minutes on their coloring sheet because they're so excited to start painting their miniature, but for others, they may spend most of the lesson or the time you have on hand to do their coloring sheet and only do a little bit of painting. It really depends on the kid, and try not to force them into starting the miniature painting. We just want them to have fun and explore this part of miniature painting at their own pace. But I'd say that most of the time the kids see the miniature and that's what they're really excited for. So they'll do their coloring in, they'll name their miniature, and then they're really eager to go on to the next step, which is painting the miniature itself. So now we're at the fun bit where the kid actually gets to get their hands on a miniature and try miniature painting. And you'd think that this would be the most complicated stage with the most kind of like teaching involved, but actually the opposite is true, and I don't do much more than just teach the kid how to dip their brush in a pot and then clean their brush between colors. At this stage, I really just want to let them have fun, and kids and even adults often get scared of doing things wrong. wrong. And it can get frustrating if you give them loads of guidelines and then they find that they physically don't have the ability to do it the way you said to do it. So guide them a little bit, of course, but also just kind of let them work it out a bit for themselves. But yes, please do not ignore your child during this step. That's not what I'm saying at all. Like, make sure you help them with things they may be struggling with, like cleaning paintbrushes and stuff like that. But importantly, make sure you're encouraging them throughout the whole process with loads of questions and stuff like that. Things like, where's your goblin from? What's his name? What color do you want his nose to be? How do you like this color? Do you like that one? Things like this. Just really encourage them and importantly, big up all their creativity and all their achievements along the way. It's really important. If you're teaching a group of kids instead of just one or two, then a great thing to do is to have a big selection of paints at the front of the room on a table or something like that for the kids to pick from, because it encourages them to share their paints with other painters in the class. I find that this is a really good thing to do because it helps the kids build a little bit of confidence and social skills, because they'll come up to the front of the class and I have another opportunity to have a conversation with them about what they're planning on doing, which means I can once again big up their creativity and be like, you go kid, you make that poo goblin from the planet Stink. That's a great idea. I love him. From my experience, I really like the kind of communal paint pile too, because it encourages the kids to walk around, interact, talk, and even share with the other kids in the room, which is wonderful to see. They'll visit other painters and ask if they can borrow their paints, and they may be shy at first, which is fine, but soon everybody in the room is doing it. And not only does this help with their manners and their social skills, but it also encourages them to talk about what they're working on and promotes the idea that painting miniatures can be a fun social hobby too, where you can make a bunch of new friends, which I think is really important. But just like the colouring in stage, one thing that we do not want to do is to rush these kids with their miniature painting. If you're teaching this lesson as kind of like a class or in a classroom setting, then chances are you'll have 1, maybe 2 hours at a push to kind of complete it. But as we know, that won't really work out very well because miniature painting really takes time. Maybe remind the kids at the start of the lesson that they can always take their goblins home or continue painting them some other time. And if they just want to focus on one element, like the fish or the face, then that's totally fine too. It's not a race to get them finished. Now this last stage is one that I really like a lot, but it absolutely depends on the kids and the vibe of the room, and that is the show and tell stage. This stage occurs at the end of the lesson or the session where I ask kids to take turns coming up to the front of the room to tell everyone about their goblin. And I'll start and I'll kick it off by introducing my goblin, what his name is, and a little story about where he's from and why I picked the colours I did, just to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit. But like I said, this stage is not for everybody, and you should absolutely read the room before trying to pull it off. Like, if I was a kid doing this kind of class and I was asked to come up to the front of the room, I would instantly hate that because I was a very, very shy and introverted child. Look at me now. But you can just tell that some little ones absolutely love this stage, and they absolutely thrive off demonstrating their speaking skills and their creativity and their storytelling as well. And even the more shy kids do end up getting a lot from the opportunity to practice a little bit of public speaking, even if they're not as confident or as loud as the other kids in the room. But even if they weren't so sure of themselves, everyone who comes up always gets a huge round of applause after they've presented their miniature, and they always seem really, really happy about that, which is just great to see. But yes, please do not force this stage on your little ones, because it could potentially break and ruin what has been up to now a really positive experience for them. If they say, I really don't want to do it, a little bit of encouragement is great, like an "are you sure?" or "I'll come up with you." But if they're really sure they don't want to do it, then don't force them, because it'll just make them sad. After that, everybody puts their goblins together at the front of the room on a big table so that they can all come up and look at everyone else's work, take loads of pictures, and generally just get another chance to casually talk about their experience. And I think the biggest and best thing that kids get from this stage is just a real sense of accomplishment. Miniature painting is such a great hobby, but I know loads of adults who are just too scared to show their miniatures off online, so I feel like this stage really normalizes the ability to work hard, achieve something, and then show it to other people, and importantly, be really, really proud of what you've done. And then at the end of the day, the kids get to take their goblins home, and they hopefully now have this real spark and curiosity for miniature painting, and also hopefully they had the best day of their entire lives. Which is actually feedback I've had before. This little girl actually said it was the best day of her entire life. And sure, she was only like 6, but I nearly cried and it meant a lot to me, so thank you. I absolutely love going places and recreating this class wherever and whenever I can, because honestly it's also really rewarding for us as adults, and it's just great to see the future of miniature painters absolutely smashing it. And sure, very few goblins end up looking like the box art one, but I swear all of them end up looking so different and really, really cool, and they all have their own backstories and names, which is often Jeff for some reason. I don't know why, that seems to be a very popular name right now. And most importantly, everyone always seems to have the best time ever. But what I hope the little ones get out of this most of all is that miniature painting is a truly great and creative hobby, which allows them to make friends, express themselves, and be truly proud of their hard work at the end of the day. But for now, I'm afraid that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, thank you for being rogues. I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Bye bye!